require auditors to provide evidence of corrective action for the identified nonconformities, right? Okay. Being the food safety program head and also the technical reviewer of nonconformities, the audit reports, and the closure of nonconformities, etc., I invariably felt the need for a better understanding of these concepts by the auditors and auditors alike. In general, auditors do not understand the difference between correction and corrective action. Sometimes I see a repetition of the same nonconformity from the same client year after year. So that means corrective action was not effectively implemented. I presume this webinar will help you to understand the concepts and make use of these tools effectively in your food safety management system stack. The objectives of the webinar are manifold. First, to help you to understand the concept of nonconformities. Then it will take you to the concept of correction. And I will also explain the concept of root cause analysis and then corrective action, because corrective action is based on root cause analysis. And finally, I'll take you through the GFSI standards requirements for corrective action. Before we get into the details of corrective action, root cause analysis, and tools used in root cause analysis, I would like to explain the types of nonconformances or nonconformities from GFSI standard perspective, their timelines, and requirements for closure of nonconformances, and your rights to appeal and dispute auditors' findings should you feel they're not justified, because you have got, as auditors, you have got every right to dispute auditors' findings should you feel they're not justified. And I'm going to explain these things in the next few slides. I'm not sure whether you are certificated or certified to SQF or BRC or IFS or FSSC, and that's why I have included all the standards in my presentation. Let me focus on the SQF code first. What are the different types of nonconformances or nonconformities under SQF code? When an SQF auditor finds deviations from the requirements of the relevant modules of the SQF code, Module 2 is compulsory or mandatory, whereas other modules, the prerequisite program modules, are optional. Optional in the sense that varies from food sector to food sector code. The auditor must advise the supplier of the number, description, and extent of nonconformities. Okay. Nonconformities against the SQF code are defined as follows, as shown on the slide. A critical nonconformity is a breakdown of controls at a critical control point, or a prerequisite program, or other process steps and judged likely to cause a significant public health risk and or where product is contaminated. There is a serious food safety issue. Then it becomes a critical nonconformity. A major nonconformity is an omission or deficiency in the SQF system producing unsatisfactory conditions that carry a food safety or quality risk and likely to result in a system element breakdown. A system element breakdown will lead to a major nonconformity, whereas a minor nonconformity is an omission or deficiency in the SQF system that produces unsatisfactory conditions that, if not addressed, may lead to a risk to food safety or quality, but not likely to cause a system element breakdown. So under SQF code, these are the three different types of nonconformities. A critical nonconformity is also raised if a supplier that is an auditee, fails to take effective corrective actions within the time frame agreed with the certification body, or if the certification body deems that there is a systemic falsification of records relating to food safety controls and the SCIF system. Critical nonconformities, of course, cannot be raised during desk audits. It can only be raised during facility audit. Now let's see what BRC talks about, or BRC says about the nonconformities. Again, there are three types of nonconformities, similar to what we saw in the case of SCIF. Critical nonconformity. A critical nonconformity is one where there is a critical failure to comply with a food safety or legal issue. A major nonconformity is one where there is a substantial failure to meet the requirements of a statement of intent. And people who are familiar with the BRC standard know what a statement of intent is, or any clause or section of the standard or a situation that is identified which would, on the basis of available objective evidence, raise significant doubt as to the conformity of the product being supplied. So that is a major nonconformity. Whereas a minor nonconformity is one where a clause or section has not been fully met, but on the basis of objective evidence, the conformity of the product is not in doubt. The level of nonconformity assigned by an auditor against a requirement of the standard is an objective judgment. It's purely based on auditor's judgment. It's an objective judgment with respect to severity and risk, and is based on the evidence collected and observations made during the audit. So the auditor collects information, collects objective evidence to come to some conclusion. Yeah, this is a critical nonconformity or a major nonconformity. The objective of the audit is to provide a true reflection of the standard of the operation and level of conformity against the standard. Basically, the objective of the audit is to ensure that the auditee is in conformance with the requirements of the standard, of the chosen standard. So consideration should therefore be given to avoiding a single major nonconformity where minor nonconformities, minor nonconformances are repeatedly raised against a particular clause of the standard. Again, BRC does not allow clustering of a significant number of minor nonconformities against a class and recording this as a single major nonconformity is not permitted. Meaning you cannot just, an auditor cannot just combine several minor nonconformities, particular specific to a section, and then convert them into a major nonconformity. The CB, of course, the certification body shall justify a high number of, say for instance, more than 20 minor nonconformities where no more than one major nonconformity is given. If an auditor gives just one major nonconformity and several minor nonconformities, that should raise the eyebrows of the technical reviewer with the CB, actually. This shall be detailed on the audit report. So that's a requirement of the BRC again. Now let's see what IFS Food says about the types of nonconformities. In IFS, there are only two kinds of nonconformities, which are major and knockout. This is slightly different from the other two standards, SCIF and BRC. Both will lead to a subtraction of points from the total amount. A knockout will reduce the total score by 50%, and a major nonconformity will reduce the total score by 15%. If a company gets one of these nonconformities, either a major or knockout, then the certificate cannot be awarded as far as IFS standard is concerned, IFS food standard is concerned. A major nonconformity can be given to any requirement which is not defined as a KO requirement. KO is nothing but knockout. It's something similar to critical nonconformity. Okay. A major is defined, a major nonconformity in IFS is defined as follows. When there is a substantial failure to meet the requirements of the standard, which includes food safety and or legal requirements of the production and destination countries. So it refers to food safety and legal requirements. A major can also be given when the identified nonconformity can lead to a serious health hazard. So in that case, an auditor will raise a major nonconformity. And as I told you, a major will subtract 15% of the possible total amount of points. In IFS, each and every requirement is scored. So when you get the total score, and when an auditee gets a major, it will reduce the total score by 15%. Okay, when there is a major nonconformity. When there is a KO, it will reduce the total score by 50%. In IFS, there are specific requirements which are designated as KO requirements. There are 10 in numbers. I'm not going to go through each and every KO requirement, but some examples of KO are responsibility of senior management. Anything that is related to responsibility of the senior management, if this is not addressed well by the auditee, then it could lead to a major. Okay. The other one is personal hygiene. Another example is traceability system. Any major lacuna, any major issues with regard to these KOs will lead to non-certification. Well, this is a different category of standard, which is FSSC 22000. The first three are under ISO 17065 scheme, whereas FSSC is under ISO 17021 scheme. So FSSC 22000 Foundation defines the following two types of nonconformity, which is also called a major nonconformity, and a minor nonconformity. Let's see how the foundation defines a major nonconformity. A failure to fulfill one or more requirements of the management system that raises doubt about the capability of the management system to achieve the expected food safety outcomes in the food supply chain or food chain, or to effectively control the process for which it is or it was intended. So that results in a major nonconformity. Okay. A number of minor nonconformities associated with the same requirement or issue could demonstrate a systemic failure and thus constitute a major nonconformity. See, the approach is slightly different in the case of FSSC. Okay. Some examples of major nonconformity in FSSC are failure to document and implement food safety management system requirements effectively. This is an example. Or the system failure, food safety management system failure with a direct impact on the safety of the food. Multiple minor failures that cumulatively indicate that the capability of the food safety management system to achieve the expected outcome, that's in doubt. So that will also lead to a major nonconformity or not just nonconformity. Okay. Failure to resolve any food safety relevant issues in a timely manner, that could also lead to a major nonconformity. Okay. So these are some examples of major nonconformity. Now let's see how these standards define the timelines required for closure of nonconformities. So again, I'm just going back to SQF. According to SQF 5, that is Safe Quality Food Institute, a minor nonconformity shall be corrected, verified, and closed out in the SQF assessment database, which is Reliance at this moment, within 30 days, 30 calendar days of the completion of the facility audit. Sometimes extensions may be granted by the certification body. It is up to the certification body to grant extension where there is no immediate threat to product safety and quality, and alternative temporary methods of controls are initiated. In those cases, the CB may extend the duration by a few more days, but essentially auditors have 30 days to get the nonconformities closed out. A major nonconformity shall be corrected and appropriate corrective action verified and closed out within 14 days, 14 calendar days of the completion of the facility audit. And what about critical nonconformity? Critical nonconformity will definitely lead to a failed audit. Okay, and a critical nonconformity raised at a certification audit results in an automatic failure of the audit, and the supplier, the auditee, must reapply for certification. Well, in the case of BRC, it's slightly different. Following identification of any nonconformities during the audit, the site must undertake corrective action to remedy the immediate issue. Taking care of the immediate issue is correction. And to undertake an analysis of the underlying cause of the nonconformity, which is otherwise known as the root cause, and develop a preventive action plan to address the root cause and to prevent reoccurrence. That's what is required in the case of BRC. The process for closing out nonconformities depends upon the level of nonconformity and the number or numbers of nonconformities identified. Critical nonconformities, or a combination of nonconformities results in non-certification. A critical nonconformity will definitely lead to non-certification. In some circumstances, the number and severity of nonconformities raised at the audit prevent the site from being certificated following the audit. So this is going to be the case where a critical nonconformity is raised. Obviously, I just mentioned that a critical nonconformity leads to non-certification. It's also possible in the case where a major nonconformity against the statement of intent of a fundamental clause is raised. Again, fundamental clauses, again, there are a few fundamental clauses like what we discussed about knockout in the case of IFS. Similarly, in the case of BRC, we have fundamental clauses. A major nonconformity against a statement of intent of a fundamental clause will also lead to non-certification. Again, the grading of nonconformities will be reviewed by the certification process. It will be done by the certification body as soon as possible after the audit. Okay. In the case of BRC, the satisfactory evidence should be provided to the auditor within 28 days, 28 calendar days. And that will be reviewed by the auditor, accepted, and the audit report will also be reviewed by the technical reviewer, and the CB will come to the conclusion that the facility can be certificated. So In the case of VRC, you have essentially 28 days to get them closed. What about IFS? IFS has got a different approach, actually. In IFS, we have what is known as nonconformity, which is a major or a knockout. Okay, so that is required. The auditee is expected to provide evidence of corrective action within 2 weeks after the pre-report, whereas deviations for the deviations from the requirement, okay, again, you have got 2 weeks to address and provide correction and corrective action to the auditor. Okay. If a minor nonconformity is identified, again, you have got 2 weeks. Minor nonconformity is otherwise called deviations in IFS. Okay. And let's see what happens in the case of FSSC. The time frame to close NCs, and I told you there are 2 types of nonconformities in the case of FSSC. One is a major nonconformity, otherwise known as just nonconformity. Okay. The other one is minor nonconformity. If a minor nonconformity is identified in an audit, a proposed corrective action is required within 3 months, that is 90 days from the date of audit. Corrective action should be completed within 12 months. The corrective action plan should be submitted within 3 months or 90 days. And the corrective action should be completed within 12 months after the audit. Okay, and the implementation or effectiveness of corrective action will be reviewed and accepted during the next on-site audit. Whereas if a major nonconformity is identified in an audit, the client must provide objective evidence of a root cause analysis and proposed corrective action. That should be agreed on by the CB. This should be provided within 14 days of the audit, and the minor nonconformity should be closed within a further 14 days. The first 14 days for the auditee to submit, and the CB, the auditor, will take another 14 days to close the nonconformity. That's for the minor, actually. So, the implementation of the corrective actions might take more time depending on the potential severity of the nonconformity. Okay. A major nonconformity is automatically raised in the event of non-completion of the approved action plan. This is important because you come up with a corrective action plan, and during the next on-site audit, the auditor reviews the corrective action that you have taken, and if it's not in line with the approved plan, then that would result in a major nonconformity next time. Okay. An FSSC 22,000 certificate will only be achieved when all action plans related to minor nonconformities have been accepted and all major nonconformities have been completed, actually. Okay. So in the case of minor, the plan should be accepted, whereas in the case of major, the nonconformity should be completed and accepted by the CB, actually. Okay. Now let's see what right you have as an auditee with regard to appeals and disputes. Okay. It's slightly different with the different GFSI schemes. So that's your right. Let's take up SQF first. All certification, under SQF, all certification bodies are required to document its procedures for handling and resolving appeals, complaints, and disputes made by an auditee, or it can also be made by another party about a supplier. It doesn't have to come from auditee all the time. Okay, it can also come from other sources. When a supplier has a reason or has cause to register a complaint about a certification body's activities or appeals or disputes that is made by a certification body, including activities and decisions of its auditors, because CBs are also responsible for the decisions taken by the auditors. The certification body then, it's supposed to investigate and resolve all these complaints without delay and keep a record of all these complaints, appeals, disputes, and resolution. Basically, SQF requires all certification bodies to come up with a procedure and resolve all these complaints and disputes in a timely manner. And what about BRC? In BRC also, a company has the right to appeal the CB's decision with regard to certification or even with regard to the decisions taken by its auditors. And whoever wants to raise a complaint should do so within 7 calendar days of receipt of the certification decision. That should be taken within 7 calendar days, and it should be sent directly to BRC, and they will investigate. And it can also, the copy of that will also go to the certification body. So again, in the case of BRC, the CBA is supposed to have a documented procedure for consideration and resolution of appeals against the cert decisions. Okay. The investigation procedures shall be independent of the individual auditor and the certification manager, because this will definitely to ensure that there is no conflict of interest. What about IFS? Again, because this is, all these standards are under 17065, their requirements are similar. In the case of IFS, the certification body shall have a documented procedure for the consideration and resolution of appeals against the results of an audit. Okay. And in the case of FSSA 22000, the requirements are similar. CBs shall have arrangements for appeals and complaints. And it refers to section or class 9.7 and 9.8 of ISO 17021 standard. Okay. And as I mentioned in the first slide, there's a lot of confusion in the food industry regarding the definitions of correction, corrective action, and preventive action. Okay. When nonconformities are identified in a food safety management system or management system audit, auditors are required to take either corrections or corrective actions, or both, depending on the chosen standard and the severity of the nonconformances. Okay. Now, let's look into the details of these things in the next few slides. But here I'm just going to define the two, that is correction and corrective action. Correction is defined as the action taken to contain the nonconformity immediately. It's a short-term solution. Okay. It's nothing but the action taken to contain the nonconformity immediately. Whereas corrective action is the action taken to prevent the reoccurrence of a nonconformity. And what's the difference between corrective action and preventive action? Preventive action is taken to prevent the occurrence of the identified nonconformity. See the difference? Corrective action is taken to prevent the reoccurrence, whereas preventive action is taken to prevent the occurrence. The first one is reactive, the second one is proactive. What is the purpose of corrective action system? Why do all food safety management system standards require auditors to take corrective actions for the identified nonconformities? In my opinion, the purposes are threefold. Number one, to collect and analyze information to identify actual and potential product safety and quality problems, quality issues. The next one is to investigate product safety and quality problems and take appropriate and effective corrective or preventive action. Finally, to verify or validate the effectiveness of corrective and preventive actions. So these are the three purposes of a good corrective action system. It's just going to be some sort of repetition. Correction is a short-term solution or quick fix. And as I mentioned in the earlier slide, this is a short-term solution, identify to contain the identified nonconformity. It is taken immediately to stop the symptom and should be specific to the identified nonconformity. And I'm going to provide a few examples of corrective action in the next few slides. Okay. These are some examples. The nonconformity is cracks on the floor in mixing and blending area, say for instance in a dairy plant. So what is correction? Correction is the identified cracks have been sealed in those areas. Another example, metal detector records are not current. Okay, so somebody just took correction, and what is a correction? Just updated the records. So that's again, these are two examples of correction. I'll provide a few more examples, another two examples in the next slide. Okay, pesticide residues have not been identified as a potential hazard in the hazard analysis of imported spices. Imported spices may contain pesticide residues, but the facility receiving spices did not identify that as a potential hazard in the hazard analysis. So what's a correction? Okay, fine. The hazard plan has been updated. Right? So just specific to imported spices. Another example is there was no evidence of review of hazard plan in 2014 or 2015. Now, the whole team reviewed the hazard plan, or it was reviewed by the queue manager, for instance. So, specific to the identified nonconformity. So that is corrective action. What about corrective action? And this is what the this slide explains. Corrective actions are reactive. Something has gone wrong and actions taken to deal with the problem. Okay. Nonconformities are generally resolved through corrective actions. Corrective action includes correction also as one of the steps. The corrective actions you take will include both short-term and longer-term solutions to make sure the problem will not occur again. The problems of nonconformities, the nonconformities may be related to processes, materials, suppliers, product, service, etc., etc. An effective corrective action for the identified nonconformity cannot be taken without analyzing the root cause of the nonconformity. Okay, and I'm going to explain the common techniques, at least two of the most commonly used techniques used in the root cause analysis. That's going to come up later. Okay, corrective action should always address this question: what in the system failed such that the problem occurred. Okay. Effective corrective action will have to ensure irreversibility of the nonconformity. It should not happen again. If it is going to happen again, if it is going to reoccur, that means the root cause analysis was inadequate, improper, and that's why it's occurring again and again. So the subsequent data should show that the problem has 100% disappeared, meaning an effective corrective action should not result in the reoccurrence of the problem. Okay. The SQF code requires auditees to take correction and corrective actions for major and minor nonconformities, whereas in the case of BRC, for each nonconformity raised, the site shall, in addition to undertaking the necessary immediate corrective action, also undertake a review of the underlying cause, which is otherwise known as root cause of the nonconformity. The root cause shall be identified and an action plan to correct this, including time scale, provided to the certification body. So the auditee, the supplier, is expected to do detailed root cause analysis for each of the nonconformity identified and provide the plan as well as the time scale to the certification body. IFS requires auditors to take appropriate corrective action for all deviations with the scores C and D as well as nonconformities. Okay. And in the case of major or KO knockout requirements scored with a B or a D, the company shall clearly state the responsibilities and implementation deadlines. Okay. And the company will forward the corrective action plan to the CB, certification body, within 2 weeks of having received the pre-report. This is after receiving the pre-report. Okay. And FSSC has a different set of requirements. If a minor nonconformity is identified in an audit, the proposed corrective action plan is required within 3 months of the audit, within 90 days of the audit. Corrective actions should be completed within 12 months after the audit. When there is a major, it should be provided within 14 days of the audit, and the major nonconformity should be closed or shall be closed within 14 days. What does the corrective action plan entail? An effective corrective action procedure requires auditors to, number one, scan the entire system to ensure no other similar nonconformity could occur. Whereas correction is purely specific to the problem identified, whereas corrective action, the auditee is supposed to scan the entire system to make sure no other similar nonconformity could occur. For instance, if the identified nonconformity was cracks on the floor, I'm taking the same example actually. If the nonconformity was related to cracks on the floor in mixing or blending area, all other areas of the plant should be checked for the identified nonconformity, and suitable action must be taken. That is the meaning of corrective action. Okay. And what about root cause analysis? What exactly is this? Root cause analysis is a problem-solving process for conducting an investigation into nonconformity or incident or a problem. It requires investigations to look beyond the solution to the immediate problem and understand the fundamental or underlying cause or causes of the situation and put them right. thereby preventing the reoccurrence of the same issue. And what are the benefits of doing root cause analysis? The benefits are you will have a permanent solution. That is, you will identify permanent solutions to the problems. You will also prevent reoccurrence, and you will use logical problem-solving approaches to nonconformity. So these are the benefits. These are some of the benefits of doing a comprehensive root cause analysis. The steps mentioned in this, or rather on this slide, are most commonly used in a typical root cause analysis. Okay. However, several approaches exist actually. Okay. In general, we have a 5-step approach to root cause analysis. Step 1, define the nonconformity. That is, questions like, what do you see happening? What are the specific symptoms? Okay, so you need to define the nonconformity. That's step 1. Step 2 is collecting data. What proof do you have that the problem exists? How long has a problem existed? What is the impact of the problem? Ask questions like this to collect data. You need to analyze the situation. You need to analyze this fully before you can move on to look at factors that contributed to the problem. Okay. To maximize the effectiveness of root cause analysis, you have to get together. Okay. You can involve experts. You can also involve frontline staff who understand the situation better. So I think it's a team-based approach. People who are most familiar with the problem can help to understand the problems better, actually. Now, what is step 3? Step 3 is identify the causative factors, the causal factors. Okay. Questions like, what sequence of events leads to the problem? What conditions allow the problem to occur? What other problems surround the occurrence of the central problems? Things like that. You ask questions, then you will be able to get some information. During this stage, identify as many causative factors as possible. Okay? Too often, people identify just 1 or 2 factors and then stop, but that's not sufficient. Okay? With root cause analysis, you don't want to simply treat the most obvious causes. You want to dig deeper, actually. Okay. Okay, and you can use some of these tools to identify the problems. That is, number 1, 5 whys. Okay, that is, ask why, the question why, until you get to the root of the problem. Drill down, break down a problem into small, detailed parts to better understand the big picture. And as I said before, I'm just going to give you 2 tools to do root cause analysis. The first one is 5 whys. Ask the question why many times. It's not just 5 times. You can continue maybe beyond 5 times. And the second tool is cause and effect diagram. Create a chart of all possible causal factors or causative factors to see where the trouble may have begun. Okay? And step 4, identify the root cause, and that's where you're going to use these tools. What is the causative factors exist? What is the real reason for the problem to occur? You're going to use the same tools to identify the causative factors, as we discussed in step 3. Now, going to step 5, recommend and implement solutions. What can you do to prevent the problem from happening again? How will the solution be implemented? Who will be responsible for it? What are the risks of implementing the solution and things like that. Okay. There are other techniques also, such as failure mode and effect analysis, otherwise known as FMEA, impact analysis, continuous improvement tool, and things like that. So I think time will not permit us to get into all these things. That's why I just gave two examples, 5 whys and Fishbone diagram or cause and effect diagram. I just wanted to explain the two most commonly used root cause analysis tools, the 5 whys and Fishbone diagram. The 5 why is a question-asking method to explore the cause and effect relationship underlying the problem. Keep asking the question why until you get meaningful conclusion. Okay. And examples of root cause analysis using 5 whys. This example is slightly different. Okay. An operator is instructed to perform a simple action, which is weighing out ingredient A, for instance. However, the operator inadvertently used ingredient B. You're going to make use of 5 whys. Why did the operator make the error? Why is that? Question why? The answer is operator was unfamiliar with the process. Okay. The operator was trained, but no supervision or sign-off to confirm training was effective. Then you ask a question, why is that or why was that? Okay. Why was the training unsatisfactory? Okay. Because both ingredients looked identical and they were not labeled. Again, you ask the question, why was that or why is that? The labels were removed during the last cleaning and they were not replaced. Okay. Cleaning staff did not consider potential for error, and checking labels not part of anyone's duty. The labels are removed when they clean the containers. Okay. So keep asking questions why until you get a meaningful answer. This example had a number of causes that contributed to the incident. We can just summarize like that. Okay. Incomplete training procedure, faulty cleaning process, lack of post-cleaning check procedure, etc. And what would be the corrective action? Update the training procedure to ensure sign-off, replace ingredient labels that cannot be removed, ensure an individual for post-cleaning sign-off. So when you implement all these things, I don't think the problem is going to reoccur. So that is how you come up with proper corrective action. For taking proper corrective action, root cause analysis is a must. Okay. Then the other tool. This is known as Fishbone diagram, cause and effect diagram, or Ishikawa diagram. So in this diagram, the various causes are grouped into categories, say equipment, process, people, materials, management, etc. Here you define the problem. You analyze the whole thing and find out why this problem was caused, or why the problem occurred. Was it because of people? Was it because of processes? Was it because of defective equipment, wrong materials, and things like that? These side arrows are, say for instance, poorly maintained equipment, improper equipment, and things like that. So, and finally, all these things flow towards the nonconformity. Okay? And again, I'm giving a couple of examples of corrective action. Let's go back to the original example, that is cracks on the floor in mixing area. And we saw in the previous slide the correction was, that particular crack was sealed. Now, let's do a root cause analysis. Why did it happen actually? It happened because there was no regular facility maintenance inspection program. The facility did not have routine or regular inspection program, or the construction was poor. So having identified the root cause, then you get into corrective action. Now, what is the corrective action? Monthly facility maintenance inspection started. So after the root cause analysis has been done, the facility has come up with monthly maintenance inspection, okay, so that they can identify such areas in the future. Or the poor quality construction material was replaced with a better quality material. Just another example. Pesticide residues have not been identified as a potential hazard in the hazard analysis. Correction was, the hazard plan has identified that particular hazard. Okay. The root cause analysis, the hazard team did not have adequate training. So that's why they could not identify these things. So for instance, pesticide residues. And the corrective action, the hazard team underwent a comprehensive training, an accredited training. And the whole team reviewed the hazard analysis, not just pesticide residues. It looked for other missing elements, and they did a comprehensive review of the hazards and identify a few more hazards that were missed out. So that is the that is what is called a comprehensive corrective action. Now, thank you very much, and if you have any questions, please